Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and this is the Geshelli Labs JNOG2 socketed, or J2S, with the AKM 4499 chip in it. This was sent to me directly from Geshelli Labs for review. They have asked nothing in return other than a fair and honest evaluation, which you are about to receive. I am also an affiliate link partner with Geshelli Labs, so I will put an affiliate link down in the description where you can buy this product. And if you choose to do so and use that affiliate link, I will get a small kickback. So please consider using that to help support the channel. I only put affiliate link money back into the channel to help keep it running. We're going to go ahead and get right into it on the other side of shameless self-promotion here, because this is the third variant of the J2 DAC series that I have reviewed. So if you're interested in build and features and all of that sort of thing, I will put links in the description where I've reviewed J2s before, because it's pretty much the same here, with one notable exception, and that is Geshelli Labs has redesigned the Monero USB implementation that they offer as a $50 option when you buy this unit. My understanding is that Gino has gone back and just redesigned that USB circuit. So that is now featured in the J2S models that you can buy on their website, and I believe also is true of the J3 and the Daisy DACs that they also offer. How does that affect sound? We'll come back to and talk about in the sound section. We're going to get into the sound, and we're going to get into how it compares with the 4493 version, which I still have, and the Schiit Bifrost 2/64. So stick around after shameless self-promotion to hear the sound review and those comparisons of the Geshelli Labs J2S with the AKM 4499 chipset. Here we go.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
All right, real quick, let's talk pricing. The J2 series is a really high value series. I have lauded their price to performance ratio in the two variants that I have reviewed before this. So the AK4499 chipset, which is in this one here, is an added, I think it's $169 above the $260 US dollar base price for just the standard J2S with the 4493 chipset in it. So to get into the 4499, you're going to be spending at least $430, right about there. There are other options, just like there were with the 4493. You can get upgraded op amps to put in here, and one of the draws again of the J2S series, the socketed series, is that they have swappable op amps in there. They're just sockets. You open the unit up, you pull old ones out, you put new ones in. If you're worried about the process of swapping op amps, see my review of the 4493 variant, which I will link to in the description below. The process for swapping out the op amps on this one are nearly identical. The only slight change here is that because the AKM 4499 chip is actually two chips and they are bigger than the 4493 chips, the circuit board in the 4499 variant is laid out just slightly differently than it is in the 4493, but otherwise the nuts and bolts of rolling the op amps in this unit are exactly the same. The op amps are easy to spot. It's the same procedure as previously. So see that video if you are worried about that or want to see how that is done. But if you upgrade the op amps and you get the most expensive op amp options that they offer, and you get a wood case such as which came on my 4493 variant here, you can run the price up to about $840 US dollars in there. So the price of the J2S with the 4499 variant with the options that you select could be from about $430 USD to about $840 USD. All right, on the subjects of those op amps real quick, Geshelli has expanded the Opamp options that they will sell you from their website, and I believe come installed on the unit when you buy it. They still are offering the Sparkos SS3602 op amps, which I have in my 4493 variant, and then I did swap into the 4499 variant here to test. More on that when we get to sound. And then also, I think there are at least 3 options they are now selling from Burson. They have partnered with Burson Audio to sell op amps there as well. So all of those, again, they're of different pricing and all of that. There are all options that you can get. And the stock op amps in the 4499 variant anymore are the Texas Instruments OPA 1656 in there. So that's what's in this unit here. That's what I initially tested with, and then I rolled the Sparkos 3602s from my 4493 into here to do some testing as well. Okay, so other than that, like, I mean, you see this one comes in the aluminum case here, which is black, and then they gave me the green glass to go with it. It's pretty sharp looking. I have always admired Geshelli's aesthetic on this because I think it just strikes such a cool and unique blend between looking like it was done in a mom and pop shop out of their garage, and it just has that charm to it, but then it's also really well done and professional looking, whether it's the aluminum case or, again, like a wood case that they made for this one back a year and a half ago when I reviewed the one with the 4493 chip in it. Okay, so then on with the sound and all of that. So when I first got this in and set it up, I connected it via coaxial to my Singer SU6, which was in turn fed by a Sonor Ultra Rendu streamer used as a Rune endpoint, using all lossless files either locally or streamed via Qobuz. Some local DSD files are in there. This one was also connected direct USB to a FIO SR11 streamer, which I just did a review for, so see the link in the description down below for that. And then it also spent some time plugged direct USB into my Asus ZenBook, which is a Windows 11 laptop using Amanero's ASIO USB driver. Okay, and then it also was plugged in through one of the optical inputs into the optical output of my PC's motherboard. I have a Windows 10 desktop PC that's a custom build. All that, so this was plugged into the optical output of that motherboard there. Downstream from this, mostly from the balanced output, this got some time on the LTA Z10E, which is a really high-end tube amp that I'm doing a review for. It also was plugged into the Aoun S17 Pro, and some other amps made it in there, but like those were probably the 2 that got the most time on it. And then before we dig into the sound proper, let's come back and talk about that new USB implementation real quick here. My previous experiences with the J2 series, the J2, I believe it was the ESS variant back a couple of years ago, and then last year with the 4493 variant, I found that the Amanero USB implementation that they were using was not particularly good at rejecting system noise. My desktop PC is a custom-built PC. It's a Windows 10 machine, and it is just noisy as all get out, right? Like, and what I mean by that is in a busy computer, particularly like big gaming rigs or big powerful rigs that are used for video editing and things like that, is you've got a bunch of electrical circuits in there going every which way. I mean, you've got a motherboard, you have a graphics card, you might have an optical drive because some people still like to use those. Okay, and I mean, there's a variety of circuits going on inside that box, and so they can just be very electrically noisy. And some of that system noise can bleed in through the USB connections and get into your USB audio. My previous experiences with Geshelli DACs have been that noise that bleeds in from the computer system really harms their sound, more so than it did with competitors, particularly from Schiit Audio. Schiit's Unison USB implementation has long been really strong at filtering out a lot of that system noise. Now, I thought that the performance ceiling of Geshelli's old Amonero USB module was higher than Schiit's Unison USB. Like, when you give it a nice clean signal, I thought that it could sonically outperform Schiit's Unison USB. It was just really hard and expensive to get to that really clean USB signal. But with this new implementation, I would say that Geshelli has made strides in their noise handling. So what I did here, I did most of my listening using that FIO SR11 streamer that I mentioned, or an Ultra Rendu streamer plugged into this via USB. And those sounded great. But to test the quality of this new USB implementation, I did direct USB connect this to that noisy desktop PC, and then I also tried my Windows 11 based Asus ZenBook laptop computer. And what I noticed is that the listening experience direct from the big desktop PC was not nearly as good as from the streamers or the laptop. It was still very noisy. Okay, the tonal balance suffered, so there was like more shoutiness in the mid-range, and there was more sharpness and harshness in the treble. And then also the spatial presentation became less three-dimensional and holographic to a quite noticeable degree. Now, I still think that a lot of people, particularly more beginner audiophiles, are still going to think it sounds pretty good direct connected there, but I mean, as I have gotten further and further along in this hobby and have heard higher and higher quality USB connections, that this was just not stacking up there. However, I got the Schiit Bifrost 2 out, which has a galvanically isolated Unison USB connection on it to do a comp here, and I plugged that directly into that big desktop PC that I mentioned and gave that a listen using the same amp, which I believe the amp at that point was the Aoun S17 Pro, and the headphone was the Audio-Technica 85000X, which is in for review. Okay, and in that case there, with that direct connection from Schiit to PC, it also suffered from basically the same things. It did not sound as clean or as clear or as nicely three-dimensional and holographic in its spatial presentation, and it also still had some of that treble sharpness and that mid-range forwardness and unevenness in its tonal balance. And what I noticed there is that like it was basically similarly noisy and just less refined and less put together as what the Geshelli was doing. So my takeaway there is that there has been a notable improvement in Geshelli's USB implementation here. They have gotten better at handling the massive amount of noise that can come from a USB connection directly from a big desktop PC. Okay, and gotten up to the level of what, you know, Schiit was doing with their Bifrost and their Unison USB implementation there. So that's really quite an accomplishment. So good job to Gino on that one for figuring that out. I think that is a pretty important thing to have because I think a lot of people are still going to be plugging these directly into big custom-built desktop gaming PCs. Okay. Beyond that, is it still better to direct connect this to a quieter device like a laptop computer like my ZenBook? Oh yeah, that was definitely an audible improvement in sound. Is it still better to plug this into a streamer like the new SR11 or an Ultra Rendu or what is it? The Blue Sound, I'm forgetting the name of that. Okay, Node, the Node streamer, or one of those Weem streamers. Like, is it better to plug these into that via USB if they have a USB connection? Yes, definitely it's better, and I recommend going that approach if you have a big, noisy gaming PC that you're going to plug this into and you want to use USB. Having said all of that now, the remainder of my sound impressions are going to be from listening to this unit through mostly that FIO SR11, and so the rest of my sound impressions are based on that. Okay, so with the 4499 chip and the Texas Instruments 1656 op amps in this, I was just immediately struck by just like, it sounded great. Right, like just that Geshelli DAC house sound out there of a neutral sound signature that really does very little to color the sound, at least to these ears, and mostly just gets out of the way from like a frequency response and tonality standpoint. Like the tonal balance between fundamental frequencies and their harmonics are really natural and realistic. There's really no range in the frequency range where it just feels like there is a little bit of emphasis or anything is pulled back. It's just kind of the picture of neutral to these ears in terms of the perceived frequency response. But then from a presentational standpoint, that AKM velvetyness, the stereotypical sound, and I caution against like taking all AKM chips and saying they sound this way, and all ESS based DACs saying they sound this way, and all R2R DACs saying they sound that way. I don't like doing that, but this one you can hear the general smoothness and the velvetyness of the AKM house sound coming through here. So neutral in frequency response, but then the presentation is just nicely refined and smooth and kind of has that velvety character to it that AKM is known for. The dynamics on it are solid. Like there is decent impact to kick drums and bass guitar string plucks and that sort of thing, but it's not like one of the standout features of the sound. It's not lacking, but it's not going to be a super hard hitting DAC in there either, at least with the stock power supply, which we'll come back to power supplies here in a moment. Okay, and then it has some decent low-end grunt and heft to it, but again, just because like it's neutral, it does not seem like it's elevated or focusing on the sub-bass rumble here like some other DACs can do. But in general, you just get a well-balanced, very neutral, very smooth presentation here. The sound stage is neither big nor intimate, like neither big nor small. It's just kind of what it needs to be, but within the sound stage, there is a fair degree of three-dimensionality and holography, there's the word, okay, and like imaging and separation and depth and layering and all of that going on for the price point. Pretty solid, pretty strong on all of that. And then like the timbre, what I was noticing when I first plugged this in, and I should further give context that when I knew this was coming and I was about to sit down and review it, I spent some time with my 4493 that has the Sparkos 3602 op amps in it. And so I had listened to that for a while before I switched over to the 4499 variant. And what stood out to me in that transition, again with the Sparkos 3602s in the 4493 and the TI 1656s in the 4499, is the timbre of the 4499, particularly with like cymbal crashes and in the treble, just sounded a lot more natural and organic to me. Not a lot more, but a little bit more natural and organic to me than the 4493 did, even with the Sparkos op amps in it. Okay, so that was kind of the bass sound. I was quite impressed for, $430 for just the bass options here. Make it $480 if you put in the Amonero USB module here. Okay, so for roughly a $480, so close to $500 DACs, I would say that this is very likely one of the best, if not the best, $500 DACs that I have heard. Okay, it's that good. It is quite impressive. Not surprising coming from the Gesellis, because they continually are in that conversation for being the best sounding option at its price point, because if they're not number one, they are at least top two more often than not. In my opinion, they kind of go back and forth with Schiit at the various price points as to which one is the best, even though they are a little bit different. Okay, but I mean, there you have it. One of the strongest performers for a DAC around $500 that you're going to find out there right now. Okay, that's again with the stock TI 1656 op amps. What happened when I put those Sparkos 3602s in here? Well, the performance elevated yet again. Okay, a little bit more clarity and cleanliness and resolution into the sound. So like that already good and strong holography and three-dimensionality to the imaging and the separation and the overall spatial presentation, improved and tightened and became a little bit more real and convincing. And that already strong timbre just took another half step towards sounding realistic and natural. To my ears, the difference going from the 1656s in here to the Sparkos 3602s, though, was not quite as big of a jump as going from the stock 1612s that are on the 4493 to the 3602s in here. To me, to my ears, that jump was bigger than on this one, but it was still very present with this DAC as well. With the 4499 variant, there was definitely an improvement in sound quality right there going up to those Sparkos 3602s. Now, I have not heard any of the Bursons in there, so I can't speak to those, but that there was an audible difference, and at that an audible improvement going from the 1656s to the Sparkos 3602s tells me that when you buy the J2S, you are not locked into a specific sound or a specific level of performance. It will change its character and it will change its overall level of technical proficiency with Opamp rolling. So you buy this and you're a tinkerer, like that's great, and you can like kind of customize it and like really make it your own kind of sound in there with Opamp rolling, similar to tube rolling on a tube device, only in all solid state form here with op amps. Okay, of note, before we dive deeper into the comparisons in here, I also think that using an aftermarket linear power supply is another decent gain in sound quality here. I have one of the older units now, but it's from Small Green Computer. For a while, they were offering a linear power supply that had a little screw in the back that you could stick in there and you could vary the voltage, and there was a display on the front so you could check to see how much voltage the output was. And so I boosted that up to 12 volts, plugged that into here, and you know how I mentioned that the dynamics on the J2S here with the stock power supply, they are just okay. They're not distractingly pulled back, but they're also not like one of the features of the sound. Well, the dynamic nature comes forward more on that linear power supply. There's more impact, okay, in the low end, so kick drums just get a little bit more oomph to them. Bass guitar string plucks have a little bit more hit to them. There's also just a little bit more sub-bass presence and rumble, so a greater sense of bass extension and grunt in the low end. But then also like snare drum hits and cymbal crashes just get a lot snappier and a lot quicker to their sound. And then also just the noise floor goes down again, which was already low. Like just just that sonic background that was already very, very dark just somehow gets darker, and there's just overall more cleanliness and clarity again to the sound when you use a nice quality linear power supply after the fact. Now, I do need to drop a disclaimer here, because the last time that I had a Geshelli in for review here, like they told me, they're like, look, the warranty that we give you, we can only guarantee with the stock power supply, because that's what they know works, and that's how, and that's what they know is safe and not going to kill the unit. So if you use an aftermarket power supply, it is very much a use at your own risk. And if you fry the unit, that's on you. Okay, so just keep that in mind if you're going to try an LPS after the fact, that like the Geshellis won't be able to help you at that point. You are outside the terms of their warranty. Okay. With that, let's get into the comparisons then with the old units. The other units here. I talked about it already a little bit with the 4493 variant here. I do think that the 4499 does offer a fairly significant upgrade in overall quality there. Like the resolution and the timbre to me again is what really stood out. So it's more resolving and thus by extension a little bit more holographic in the spatial presentation than the 4493. But it really was that timbre to me. Like this never really struggled with timbre. This is just better with the 4499. Okay, just a little bit more, again, natural, like just everything sounds a little bit more real and a little bit more organic and a little bit more natural to it. And that was, again, like it's really hard to A/B these directly in a quick switch because I had to take, you know, the 449 or the 3602 op amps out of this one and put it in this one. So I couldn't do it quick, but like that was the thing that stood out to me here, is that there's just more resolution, more holography to the spatial presentation, more overall refinement to the sound, and then a more organic and natural timbre coming from the 4499 than the 4493. And this would have been like using the stock power supplies on each unit and then also using the same op amps in this unit, which happened to be the Sparkos 3602s that I was able to do the most direct comparison with. Okay, so is the 4499 a significant upgrade over the 4493? Yeah, I think so. There is a fair amount of improvement in there. Is it going to be worth it to you to spend the extra $169 or $179? I forget the number right at the moment. To get the 4499, I can't answer that for you, but I can tell you that like there's a fairly decent return on investment there if you do that. Okay, I found that with the Sparkos op amps in here and using the outboard linear power supply, okay, that the 4499 variant then pulled into a virtual technical dead heat with the Bifrost 2/64 in terms of overall performance and sound quality. Now the Bifrost 2/64 here is still going to be a little bit warmer in its sound because the Schiit house sound, and I have to be really careful how I, put a space between Schiit and house. But anyway, like that house sound there is a little bit warmer and a little bit more dynamically impactful. So there's a little bit more like impact and slam, particularly in stock form, okay, on here. But the J2S, actually I can just hold them up here with the 4493 here, like can essentially pull even with the Bifrost 2/64 in terms of that impact, the physicality to the sound and so forth. Now, it's still going to remain more neutral where the Bifrost 2 is a little bit warmer. So like vocals and all of that sound just a little bit warmer and fuller on the 2/64. They're not quite as like deep male vocals could, to some, not to me, but to some, I could say, saying that, they would report that like deep male vocals sound a little bit too chesty on the Bifrost, whereas they sound a little bit more natural on the J2S. Okay, but the Bifrost is also going to be a bigger stager. If you are a fan of bigger sound stage, then like just that's part of Schiit's house sound as well. So they have a big sound stage. They have like a little bit warmer but still very natural and organic timbre to them, and their house sound is a little bit punchier and more dynamic than Geshelli's house sound. But in terms of all of the other things, resolution, holography within their respective size of sound stages, and so forth, with the Sparkos op amps and the outboard linear power supply and the 4499 chip, the J2S basically pulls dead even in overall performance with the Bifrost 2/64. Now, the J2S, when you get it all loaded up and you buy an external power supply for it, if you're going to go that route, will probably cost closer to about $850, $900, depending on where you get your power supply, where the Bifrost 2 is $800, and they are essentially dead even in overall technical performance there. Why would you still pick the J2S over the Bifrost 2? Well, again, they do sound a little bit different. The J2S, again, a little bit more true neutral in its perceived frequency response. The Bifrost 2 a little bit warmer. Okay, but the J2S, particularly if you get the Amonero USB module in it, will also do PCM decoding up to 384 kilohertz sampling rates, and it will do DSD decoding up to DSD 512. The Bifrost is limited to PCM 24192. It will not go beyond that. It does not do DSD. Okay, so if you like playing around with upsamplers like HQ Player or Pangalactic Gargle Blaster, the Geshelli might be the better option for you. If you like to listen to DSD files, the Geshelli might be the better option for you. And if something about the warmth and or otherwise of the Bifrost 2 sound signature doesn't work for you, then for, you know, pretty close to the same price, there's a different sound up there with pretty much equal overall technical performance sitting right there on the market from a company that's easy to like and easy to support. Okay. And that is a change, because even with an outboard power supply and the Sparkos op amps and all that, I did think the 4493 variant was just a little bit overall behind the Bifrost 2/64's overall performance. Still sounds great and was excellent for the price, but just not quite up to the level of this one. So the 4499 chip closes that gap. And so that's another quick comparison then again between these two, and another mark in favor of the 4499 chip, I believe. Last thing that I want to comment on is the performance from the XLR balanced output and the single-ended RCA output. And unfortunately, this DAC, just like pretty much every other balanced DAC in this price range, it performs notably better from the balanced output than it does from the single-ended output. The differences are fairly predictable and fairly common there. It's just that the sound stage closes in a little bit when you go from balanced to single-ended. You lose a little bit of resolution. So the single-ended output sounds just slightly veiled in comparison to the balanced output. And then the tonal balance suffers a little bit. So there's a little bit more treble sharpness, a little bit more unevenness, and therefore a less natural timbre through the mid-range and that sort of thing. And then there's just a little bit less dynamic impact from the single-ended output as well. Is the gap here huge? No, I would say that on average, like, this is a little bit smaller gap between single-ended and balanced output performance on this unit than there is in the market at large here for DACs under $1,000 US. But it's still there and it's still noticeable. So if you need to use the single-ended outputs, just keep that in mind. Yes, the op amps, different op amps can improve the performance, but if you put the same op amp on the single-ended out and then put a pair of the same type of outputs on the balanced output, that difference is going to remain in there. It's just the nature of going from a balanced to single-ended circuit at this price, because to do that well requires quite a lot of time, effort, and money to do that well. All right, so with that, we'll turn to my final thoughts. All right, so do I recommend the 4499 variant of the Geshelli J2S? Yeah, I do. The Geshellis have done it again. The sound is excellent. You can roll op amps and just tweak the sound and dial it in to your liking. And you know, you can get another boost in performance from using an outboard power supply too, or an upgraded power supply as another way to kind of customize the sound there. For now, again, the J2S 4499 variant, easy to recommend. Sounds great. The Geshellis have again done it with an excellent price to performance kind of product here, with their very, I think, charming but also unique aesthetic, you know, and an American company, good people. I have enjoyed talking with the Geshellis when I have interacted with them, running a good company. Okay, easy to like them, easy to support them. Another slam dunk of a product. So I am Wave Theory. Thanks for watching my review of the Geshelli J2S DAC with the 4499 chip in it. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, check out my PayPal and my Patreon. Generally do those things you do to support YouTube channels, and as always, enjoy the music.